So hi, Microbehunter here, and today I want to talk a little bit about buying stereo microscopes. Most of the videos that I made so far on this channel were about compound microscopes and compound microscope buying advice. But today I got a pretty long question, and I would like to read it out to you. And yeah, 3 pages long, and I'm going to interrupt myself and I'm going to comment. And on the last page, there are quite a few questions here. And I think it's kind of interesting because it doesn't matter how many videos I make about microscope buying, there are always new questions, and that's really something that I like. And it actually shows that the community is thriving and growing. But yeah, I'm going to jump right into it, and I'm going to read it out to you, and then I'll also comment. What microscope should I buy? I'm sure this question is asked often. However, all I could find within the community was based mostly on cost. There wasn't much based on what the person wanted to do with their microscope. I'm going to interrupt myself right now. That is correct. And as a matter of fact, in the recent times, I've also moved towards either more towards the cost issue. The reason being that many people, when they're interested in the hobby, they do not know very much yet about the hobby to make detailed specifications of what the microscope needs. Let me give you an example. If I go on a holiday and I want to buy myself a camera, it's almost like asking which camera should I buy when I want to take holiday pictures. Well, I can use a mobile phone as well, or I can buy myself a very expensive camera. Yeah, if I don't have any more detailed specifications, then this is going to be, of course, difficult. But if I say, okay, I want to go on a holiday and I want to take pictures of birds that are far away sitting on a tree, because if I'm interested in ornithology, the study of birds, well, then a mobile phone is not going to work anymore. And for this reason, for general purpose amateur hobby microscopy, in many cases, the people don't have very detailed specifications yet. And this makes it, of course, much more difficult. And in this case, many people suggest, including myself, well, if you don't know in more detail what you want, then look at the cost and buy the best microscope that your money can afford. But it's not really necessary sometimes to buy those microscopes. So, but let me go on here. Okay. My apologies for how naive these questions are. I've been considering getting into the hobby of microscopy for roughly a year. Well, we're going to see that some of the questions that you're asking are not that naive, and don't wait 1 year. Honestly, if you consider going into the hobby or any hobby at all, yeah, then buy yourself a low-cost, reasonably low-cost microscope, one that you don't feel sorry about if you choose not to pick up the hobby. And then you can get some hands-on learning experience, and that's probably more valuable than any YouTube videos that I'm making. But don't overthink it too much, my advice. I narrowed down that I would like a stereo microscope rather than a compound microscope to start. I'd like to begin my journey by looking at insects, small animals. It's my understanding that these larger objects should be examined with a stereo microscope. Yes, that is correct. For those specimens, stereo microscopes are definitively much better. And if you are, you're one of those lucky folks, you already know what you want to look at. So you've already made a very important decision. You said that you want to go towards stereo microscopy, which is great. Yeah. So now it goes on. I also know I want to purchase a trinocular microscope. Ultimately, I'd like to take pictures and display them in my home office just for fun. This is also an important piece of information because this kind of also reflects a little bit on the type of camera or lighting that you might want to use. My budget is flexible. I'm more concerned with getting a microscope that I love. I believe it would be wise not to spend an exorbitant amount of money on my first microscope. Now, I totally agree on that because yeah, you have to kind of gain some hands-on experience first, and then when you know better what you want to do with a microscope or what your preferences are, and if you know the advantages and disadvantages of your previous model, it makes it much easier for you to make a more informed decision later on. I'm sure some options will boil down to personal preference. Let's set this initial cost at $1,000 US or less. Now that's already, yeah, this will get you quite far already. I'm fairly confident a large table stand as opposed to a narrow one would be preferable. I intend of buying microscopes from Omax Microscopes. Now I'll talk about brands later on a little bit because I think that the actual brand is not so important, because many microscopes are actually rebranded and the same microscope is sold under different brands. After trying for some time to select a microscope, I felt I needed some advice from someone with experience. Here are some questions that I had, me hesitating on which microscope to choose. Thank you in advance for your knowledge and time. Well, yes, now we start the questions. And again, I want to say these are my opinions, which might give you a little bit more possibilities to think, but don't overthink it. That's also another suggestion that I have. So we're going to start off now, and some of these questions are quite interesting. Are there benefits to halogen, LED versus fluorescent that apply specifically to microscopy? Okay, allow me to make a small correction to your question. I think you did not mean to say fluorescent light, but you probably meant this tungsten light or incandescent light. Fluorescent microscopy uses ultraviolet light and is used for compound microscopes. And generally, fluorescent microscopy is not really used in amateur microscopy so much. Yeah, so I suppose that you're using, you wanted to say tungsten or incandescent light. Now, these are the old-fashioned light bulbs. And honestly, I don't think that any microscopes these days are still made using those light bulbs, because they have a significant disadvantage. And that is that they generate a lot of heat, a lot of infrared light, and the light intensity is not quite as bright as, for example, halogen lamps. And also those light bulbs, what they will do is they will change their color as they age. So actually these days, nowadays, we talk about halogen and LEDs, and fluorescent is for different type of microscopy, and incandescent lamps, well, are, I would say, probably already outdated. So is there now a difference between halogen and LEDs? Well, essentially, in these days, many more microscopes are made with LEDs, and some compound microscopes, especially more high-end microscopes, still are sold using halogen. And the reason is that doctors who use those microscopes, they are trained to identify the stains and colors using the color spectrum of halogen. Yeah, so if they've been trained over many years using that, then yeah, but then they prefer halogen. However, modern high-end microscopes, they have now also adjusted the LED color spectrum in such a way that it's also the same. So I would say it's probably more of a not such a practical difference, but sometimes if you choose the type of illumination, you're already limited anyway. For example, if you use a ring lamp like the one I have over here, it's going to be LEDs. LED has a range of brightness. Is more light better? More light is always better for several reasons. First of all, if you increase the magnification, then the light intensity is going to go down, of course. But for photography, and you seem to be interested in photography, you need a lot of light because otherwise you have to go up with the ISO sensitivity of the camera, and this introduces camera noise at higher magnifications where the light intensity is lower. So generally, if you have more light, you won't be stretching the camera to the limits as much. So I would say you can never have enough light. However, the intensity of the light bulb is not the only factor that determines light intensity. But it's also the diameter of the light cone. So if you have a very bright light and it's kind of spreading the light over a larger area, then the effective light intensity is going to be lower. So you see there are other factors also involved here. And what you want to have is you want to have a very narrow, very pointed cone of light, and then also the light intensity will be higher. So I'm just saying that the watts of the lamp don't really say a lot about the effective light intensity that you're going to get when you're actually using it. Okay? So, yeah, so more light is always better, but then again, yeah, how much light do you need? Maybe the lamp that you have is going to be enough, so yeah, we'll see. Why would I want gooseneck lighting? Is dual necessary, and when would cold fiber be helpful? Okay, I need to explain this a little bit more. So now, what I've got here, this is so-called a gooseneck. Now, this is not for a lamp, okay? This is actually for connecting a microphone. It's a microphone stand. But I'm just using this here as an example because I don't have one with a lamp, okay, for a microscope. I just wanted to show you how a gooseneck actually looks like. And there are now two possibilities for this. One possibility would be to have here on front, usually LED, a small LED flashlight type of lamp. And then there's a cable going through here, right? And then you can essentially point it directly here on the side, if you can see it, and you can kind of point it directly on your specimen, and you've got the light coming from the side. And the second possibility that you also refer to is the so-called cold light, and where this opposite end here is connected to a box which houses the lamp and the lighting system. There's also a dial that you can use to adjust the light intensity, and then you have glass fiber. And you have over here a very small opening then where you get a very focused cone of light on your sample. Now those those boxes that you have here have the advantage that they separate the lamp they separate the lamp and also the heat source. So you can have a very strong lamp and also with a built-in cooling system, and you also have a very small opening with a very focused and concentrated light beam. So those that you refer to, those cold light systems, okay, that you refer to, actually they are able to provide a very high light intensity. And if you have a lamp here, an LED with a cable, the easier solution, or then you essentially get the light spread over a larger area. But this might have the advantage that you don't need the separate box standing around. Okay, so yeah, advantages and disadvantages for both cases. And then the next question is, a dual necessary? Dual means that you have one on the left side and another one from the right side. Now, if you are into photography, then I recommend dual, and not necessarily for the light intensity alone, but because if you have light coming from the side, then it will cast a shadow. And this shadow actually has the advantage that it enhances the three-dimensional effect. But if you want to take pictures, and nice pictures that you want to hang up in your room, maybe those shadows might be disturbing and you want to have a more even illumination. And in this case, a lamp light source from the other side and actually, it's act like a fill light to remove those shadows. And then by adjusting the distances or the light intensities, you can actually adjust it in such a way that you only have a small shadow being cast, and then you have a slight three-dimensional effect, and then you can have a fill light coming from the opposite end. Yeah, and of course this works both for those with glass fiber and also those that have a small lamp here. Now what I've been doing before I bought myself this ring light here, which I'll also be talking about, is I simply used desk lamps with a gooseneck, and this also kind of worked. So you see there are a variety of different possibilities, all with their advantages and disadvantages. And I would say to a certain extent it is a bit of personal preference. But now I want to talk a little bit about the ring light because they also have certain issues or advantages or disadvantages. Now this ring light I bought separately. It can be connected here to the bottom of the microscope. You have to be careful that you actually get a microscope where you can actually connect it here. I had to buy myself this additional adapter here to actually hold the ring light. The ring light, of course, has a power and you can regulate this. LEDs, of course, pretty low cost. These ring lights have the advantage that they give you a very uncomplicated illumination system, and you don't need any extra things standing around. But they do have one slight disadvantage, and that is because the angle of the lamp is so close to the lens. The ring light, the LEDs, will actually reflect on water droplets. And for example, if you look at insects that have a shiny exoskeleton, then the ring light is going to reflect on the insect. You might like that or you might not like that. It's an artifact in any case. And if you use a lamp or gooseneck lamp coming from the side, then of course the lamp itself will not reflect off the insect, because the angle is too shallow, obviously. But here, you can see the reflections, and you might like that or you might not like that. But I would say probably for photography, you might consider this as an artifact that you would like to try to avoid. So that's a disadvantage of those ring lights. So I'm gonna go on. So I talked about the dual illuminations, and should I attempt to use my own camera for the photo tube? It's a Sony RX10 II, or is it wise to purchase a camera with a microscope that has a USB connection? That's a science on itself. Okay, that's a long story. It might not. Maybe the question might not even need to be answered, because it probably depends. Are you able to get a T2 adapter ring for your camera? Need to explain this. If you want to connect a DSLR camera to a microscope, what you need is you need an adapter, and there are some adapter optics in here. And these adapter optics, what they do is they adjust the size of the image in such a way that it fits on the camera sensor. So this is pretty important. There are some adapters that do not have an optics in here. I do not recommend them for a variety of reasons. I made several videos on this. So you need this adapter, and then you need a T2 adapter ring, which goes between the adapter and the camera. So this is the one here, and this is camera specific. So I've got a Canon camera here, so I need a Canon T2 adapter ring. For Canon and Nikon, I know that they're readily available, but I don't know so much about other brands. So you have to check first, do you have a Sony, is there a Sony T2 adapter ring available? And if there is, then you can buy those DSLR adapters. Usually they already come with a Nikon or Canon adapter, T2 adapter, and you simply don't use them and use your Sony one. And then you can have the following possibility. You can connect then this camera here on top. That is essentially one possibility how you can do that. Because of the weight of the camera, you need a trinocular microscope. What is the problem and what are the advantages with this? I tell you, I'll be very honest, I made videos on this. I was absolutely not happy at all with the image quality of this specific adapter in combination with my stereo microscope. It worked quite well with my compound microscope. So you see, there seems to be some kind of a interaction between the optics here, because they introduce certain aberrations, and if they don't work quite well together with the optics of the microscope, the image quality was very blurry. Kind of strange. I have no full explanation for this, why it would not work well for this one, but it would work well for the compound microscope. I just need to pass this on. You might try different adapters, and there are also other adapters around that actually do work quite well. Yeah, I got one over here, for example, and you see it's a whole set, and you have different diameters here, and if you put it together, then there is also, of course, here, optics. You see that the diameter is much wider here of the lens. And I found that this actually works better with the DSLR camera on my stereo microscope than this one over here. However, it is significantly larger, so it's always a trade-off. So second possibility, the second-hand possibility is actually to use you cannot buy them new anymore, a photo tube like this, which actually, you see one over here also here on my microscope. The other one here is from Olympus, not manufactured anymore. There is over here also a so-called photo projection eyepiece, and up here I can also directly connect a camera to it. Now those adapters, this one was actually able to provide a significantly better image quality than the one that I had here. But it's kind of large, and it's also not so cheap because you have to buy this second-hand. Yeah, and then the next possibility is to use a dedicated microscope camera here. Okay, there is a USB connector over here, and of course it also goes up here into the photo tube. You can also, of course, connect it directly into an eyepiece here. However, if you want to connect it to an eyepiece here on the microscope, here the diameter is thicker, so you need an adapter ring here. Sometimes those cameras do come with adapters also for stereo microscopes, because the diameter of the eyepiece is larger. Now, what about those? I also got pretty good results with those in this combination. Also has to do something with the optics. However, you always have to have your computer turned on. Something that I personally don't want to do is when I do microscopy, I want to have my computer switched off. And I simply want to do microscopy and not always look at the computer screen at the same time. On the other hand, this allows you a very easy way to capture images. Probably not so good for videos, because the USB connection, USB 2 in this case, the USB connection is kind of slow. So what should you do? I cannot say. It's a lot is personal preference. And I would say you have to experiment around a little bit. And and by the way, it's also another possibility that some microscopes, you can actually disconnect this optics and then have a connected directly over a C-mount. Some microscopes also allow this. So you see there are a whole range of different possibilities, but unfortunately, I cannot really tell you the better solution, because if there were one solution that's automatically better, then probably the other solutions wouldn't exist. If you want to have a very uncomplicated, out-of-the-box solution, you have to probably talk to one of the more expensive brand microscope manufacturers, one of the big ones, Olympus, Nikon, Zeiss, or Leica. Then basically they come already with complete solutions, and they might provide a solution out of the box. So I'm going on. Is there one benefit of the different ranges? Is there a benefit for the ranges of magnification? Specifically, they're 5 to 80, 10 to 80, 7 to 45. Obviously, more magnification is good, not always. But what would you recommend, and why should? So the thing is the following. When you go over here, in this case, that's a zoom microscope. It goes all the way from 4.5, the objective, all the way down to 0.7. I have to multiply it by 10. So this means that over here now I have a magnification of 7 until 45. If I want to change the magnification of this microscope, then there are two possibilities. Either I can change the magnification here on the eyepieces. I never do that. Or I can add so-called Barlow lenses down here, which either increase or decrease the magnification. Now, not all microscopes allow you to connect Barlow lenses, number one. This one there is. Now, you might wonder, what is the point of actually reducing the magnification? The advantage of reducing the magnification is that I can actually then go up all the way higher. Okay, I have a much larger working distance and also larger depth of field at the same magnification. So there are some advantages to that. Now, if you go up with a magnification beyond 45, 4.5 times 10, beyond that, then the depth of field is really going to go down already, it's going to be very dark. You need a bright light, in many cases you don't see so much more because the specimen does not provide so much information anyway. So I've been totally fine with a total magnification of 45, and in many cases I already thought that this was actually way more than I needed. But it is possible to go up still further if you want to. In this case, you really need a very strong light source. So, and all of those magnifications that they indicated here essentially derive because of different combinations of, let's say, eyepieces and or Barlow lenses. But the really important thing is what magnification does your objective have, and generally stereo microscopes go up to a magnification, a total magnification of around 40 times. And everything else is, I would say, already kind of stretching it a little bit. Yeah. Should I consider a boom? A boom that's basically not this one over here, but sometimes you can connect those. It's able to take it off, and then there's a boom that you can actually swing it out. And the boom microscopes, they of course require a lot of space, but they give you essentially a lot of space also on the table to work on. So those boom microscopes are commonly used for people who are doing electronics and soldering, where they need a lot of space. Where you do not need any light from the bottom. So in my case, I don't have a boom, but I have a large base plate here. Also no light coming from the bottom, and I don't need that. However, some of these microscope heads, they can be mounted also on a different base, and it's this modularity, and depending on what you want to look at. I mean, I kind of like this because you can take this out, and depending on the color, you get a different background. Yeah. And I don't really need light from the bottom, and as I said, I want to have a large surface here. If you don't like this, then you can of course also connect it to a boom. However, of course, always consider portability as well. Is Omax microscope a solid choice for my purchase? I would say the brand does not really matter so much, because at this price level, especially if you go online on Amazon, many or most of these microscopes, like for example this one over here, is manufactured in China and then rebranded. So this one over here is branded as Amscope, but you find the same microscope branded under a variety of different names as well. I would say that this is probably the least important thing, because within a brand, the quality and the type of microscopes that are offered also varies. So I would suggest that you look at the individual microscope. I can give you, however, if you're already willing to spend around $1,000 on your microscope, I can give you the suggestion that you, just for your interest, also write an email to the larger microscope manufacturers and ask them for an offer for a stereo microscope with a trinocular head to connect the camera to. Just get an offer. They will send you some nice colorful pamphlets to get your interested, of course. And then you simply read through that and simply get yourself an overview of what is there out in the market. Because normally when people want to start the hobby, the first place they check is Amazon, because that's where it's the easiest way to buy. But I recommend that you also, simply for your own interest in education and so on, get yourself a couple of nice pamphlets from the other microscope manufacturers, or maybe you can also download some of them by visiting their website. And then you will not see a price there. You have to ask them for an offer, and maybe they can already put together a system with a camera or adapter as well, and they're able to help you out here. I recommend that you do this simply to get a better overview of what the market offers. Last but not least, and again, thank you for your time and expertise. This hobby has a learning curve. That's the whole point of a hobby. and we want to learn something. I learn a lot. I genuinely could not sell and purchase with confidence. I look forward for your advice. Don't listen to me. Do not listen to me because I am not you, and every microscopist and every hobbyist has different expectations to the hobby, a different different directions of what they want to observe. And my advice is simply to try the things out. And if you discover that you outgrow an instrument and device, then you can always sell your old one and buy a new one. I think that can also be seen as part of the hobby. Okay, almost half an hour I'm talking right now. I wish you all the best. Happy microbe hunting as always, and see you around next time. Bye-bye.